Good afternoon, all. This is Joel Snyder. And first, I want to thank Josh Mealy and Smith Kettlewell for their work to date on the Video Description Research and Development Center, and in particular on this seminar. The center is a relatively new initiative, but it's already making an impact, so bravo! And while the focus, of course, is on description for video, my belief is that once quality description becomes more widely available in media, we will gain far more visibility, you should forgive the expression, and then make great strides in making other areas of our culture more accessible to people who are blind or have low vision. I'm speaking of cinema, museums, performing arts, and other events, in addition to television and recorded or streamed video. I describe audio description as a literary art form. I'm stretching my arms out wide. No. Let me rephrase that. It's a type of poetry. I'm bringing my hands in closer to each other. Actually, it's somewhat akin to a haiku. My hands are almost touching. I say a haiku because we must use as few words as possible to provide a verbal version of the visual. The visual is made verbal, and aural, A-U-R-A-L, I'm pointing to my ears, and oral, O-R-A-L, I'm gesturing to my mouth. We use words that are succinct, vivid, and imaginative to convey that visual image, not fully accessible to a segment of the population. New estimates, by the way, by the American Foundation for the Blind now put that number at over 25 million Americans alone who are blind or have difficulty seeing even with correction. But then description is also valuable when the visual image is not fully realized by the rest of us, sighted folks who see but who may not observe. I often say that the use of audio description goes back to prehistoric times. Two sighted cavemen were munching on some leftover saber-toothed tiger when one fellow screamed to the other, "Look out behind you, Og! There's a mastodon coming from the left!" There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, right there, the origin of audio description. And Og had 20/20 vision. He was simply looking the wrong way. Well, since then, we've learned that description is, of course, extremely valuable for people who are blind or have low vision, but also for someone who's in the kitchen making a sandwich while the TV is on in the living room. He or she doesn't miss a beat. A bit of history for you. Audio description was first developed in the United States. It was the subject of a master's thesis in San Francisco, California, in the 1970s by the late Gregory Fraser. Mr. Fraser was the first to work out the concepts behind the act and the art of audio description. And in 1980, a theater in Washington, D.C., Arena Stage, assembled a group of people to provide advice on accessibility issues. Among the committee members were Chet Avery, a Department of Education employee who worked with the funding of captioning, a blind man, and Dr. Margaret Fansteel, then Dr. Margaret Rockwell. Dr. Fansteel, a blind woman, founded the Metropolitan Washington Ear, a closed-circuit radio reading service for people who are blind or for those who don't otherwise have access to print. Well, from there, the Washington Ear's audio description program was developed, and I'm proud to have been a part of that first group at the Ear, the world's first ongoing audio description service. Now, early on, actually in the 1970s, Japanese broadcasters experimented with description for television programming, but in 1985, WGBH in Boston came to the Ear to collaborate on a pilot of television description for the PBS American Playhouse series. Well, PBS remains the leader in offering description for a range of programs. For 5 years, I produced description for the network's mainstay, Sesame Street. Other broadcasters began to offer some description in the 1990s and at the start of the new millennium. Indeed, it was in 2002 that the FCC issued an order mandating description at a minimal level, but the order was vacated following a successful challenge in the courts. Opponents maintained that the FCC had gone beyond its authority by enacting a mandate without specific direction from Congress. Well, that led to a decade of hard work by many proponents of description, and finally, the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act, signed by President Obama in October 2010. And speaking of the president, there's his photo in the PowerPoint of him signing the act. I can also report that the president himself knows about audio description and is supportive. And here's another photo for you. There he is, shaking hands with a describer at the White House, where I was helping to make a ceremony accessible to citizens there who are blind or have low vision. So, beginning in July of this year, a mandate for description on television goes into effect. Initially, it requires the top 4 terrestrial broadcasters, that's NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox, and the top 5 cable programmers, USA, TBS, TNT, Disney, and Nick at Night, all of them to include description with at least 4 hours of programming each week in the top 25 markets. I should also mention a bit about the transmission process. Many of you may know, in this country, before June of 2009, description for television was accessible via a special audio channel available on stereo televisions. Viewers would select the SAP, Secondary Audio Program Channel, in order to hear the regular program audio accompanied by descriptions, precisely timed to occur principally during the lapses between dialogue and significant sound elements. Unfortunately, on the one SAP channel available, a viewer might access Spanish translation as often as one would hear description. Well, now in the era of digital transmission, there is the technical facility to offer 2 or more secondary audio streams. This is one item that the FCC is wrestling with, and a topic of great discussion among the members of the FCC's Video Programming Access Advisory Committee. It's a panel on which I serve, and we're also striving to create uniform standards for the transmission and reception of the description audio. So that, very briefly, is the broadcast story. Since we're focused on video description here, there's still much to be done in other video formats. The percentage of all video and film that incorporates description is still minuscule. DVDs are an ideal format for description because the audio track can be turned on or off as desired, and an audio menu can be programmed. Well, given that fact, it's quite unfortunate that there are still so few DVDs produced with description in the United States. And keep in mind that we're a country of some 320 million, and we have access to maybe 150 commercial DVDs with description. In the UK, with a population of only about 60 million, they're fortunate to have at least 500 DVDs available with description. And only a handful of DVDs anywhere include an audio menu, making their navigation accessible. So we have plenty to do with respect to description and video, and that's why Smith Kettlewell's work with the Video Description Research and Development Center is really quite critical. Finally, I want to note one area that I believe is ripe for description research. We all know, and it's been demonstrated in various studies, that captions have a positive effect for children learning English. Well, not too long ago, I conducted a workshop at the Connecticut Children's Museum in New Haven with daycare workers and reading teachers on what I think represents a new application for audio description, literacy. We experimented with developing more descriptive language to use when working with kids and picture books or videos. It's not surprising that those picture books, those videos, rely on images to tell the story. But a teacher or a family member trained in audio description techniques would never simply hold up a picture of a red ball and read the text, "See the ball." There's the red ball for you on the screen. No, I think a teacher with description in mind would add, the ball is red, just like a fire engine. I think that ball is as large as one of you. It's as round as the sun, a bright red circle or sphere. Now, what's happened? The teacher has introduced new vocabulary, invited comparisons, and used metaphor or simile with toddlers. So by using audio description, books, videos are made accessible to children who have low vision or are blind, and I think you help develop more sophisticated language skills for all kids. A picture is worth 1,000 words. We've all heard that. Well, maybe. But an audio describer might say that a few well-chosen words can conjure vivid and lasting images. In closing, I want to emphasize one point. There really is no reason why a person with a visual disability must also be culturally disadvantaged. In the United States, the principal constituency for audio description has an unemployment rate of about 70%. Well, I'm certain that with more meaningful access to our culture and its resources, people become more informed, more engaged with society, and more engaging individuals, thus more employable, and essential to the development of artists who are blind or have low vision. Audio description makes those artworks accessible to them, to those budding artists who happen to be blind or have low vision. Thank you for listening, and I invite you to be in touch if you have any questions or would like additional information. My contact information is on the slide being shown now. I also want to quickly mention that one of my contracts is with the American Council of the Blind. I direct its audio description project. I encourage you to visit our website at www.acb.org/ADP. We're currently working on user-focused guidelines for the production of audio description and a certification process for audio describers. We provide recognition for leading efforts in description, and we have a great program that invites kids who are blind or have low vision to write reviews of described films, videos, or television programs. And we give awards to the top young described film critics. And this July, you can get involved with our next Audio Description Project conference, followed by a 3-day training intensive. That's this July in Louisville, Kentucky, in conjunction with the annual conference and convention of the American Council of